There's a special kind of racket a Lamborghini makes when it rips across freshly tilled farmland, like 1,000 blenders chewing gravel while a cow screams bloody murder. This was the third time that week. I stood in my barn doorway, hand resting on a rusted shovel, watching two women in a gleaming white Lamborghini Urus tearing across my property as if it were their own private runway. Dust curled in hot, angry spirals behind them. My cows bolted. One hen squawked and flapped into the air. A fence post cracked and folded under their back tire. They didn't slow down. If anything, they hit the gas. Inside the car, the twins sat in giddy triumph. Susan, blonde, sweaty, cackling like she'd just won the lottery, had her head out the window, hair flying wild. Carol was behind the wheel, face hidden behind cartoonishly oversized sunglasses, chewing gum like a bored teenager stuck in detention. If entitlement had a turbo engine, it would look exactly like them. I'd first met them a month before. Early Sunday morning, I was patching wire fencing along the back pasture. The ground started thrumming with bass before I even saw them crest the ridge. Then the Lamborghini burst into view, spitting gravel, white paint gleaming like a snowdrift in July. I raised both hands to flag them down. They stopped barely. Susan nearly flattened a goat trying to brake. "You lost?" I asked as I approached the window. Carol gave me a smirk that belonged on a reality show villain. "Nope," she chirped. "GPS says this is the shortcut to the highway." I glanced at the private property, no trespassing sign they'd blown past without a second thought. "You're trespassing," I told them, voice calm but hard. Susan lifted her phone, snapping a picture of me like I was some rural meme. "Aw, Farmer John's mad," she hollered. "Look, Carol, he's got a pitchfork," Carol laughed. "It's 2025. Maybe don't build your farm where people want to drive." With that, she floored the gas. The Lamborghini shot off in a storm of dust and smugness. I stood there, breathing slow, letting the insult soak into my bones. At first, I wanted to believe it was a one-off city folks lost, relying on GPS instead of common sense. But the next day, they came back, and the day after. And the day after that. Before long, it became their routine. Every few days, late afternoon, the bass would start shaking my windows. I'd walk out to find them barreling through the same gap in the fence, tires kicking up topsoil, waving like we were old pals. Sometimes they brought friends. One afternoon, a convertible full of shrieking women followed them through the pasture, honking like it was the Rose Parade. They didn't care. Not about the land, the animals, or the people who worked there. They were a storm of entitlement with a luxury logo stamped on the hood. The first week, I taped polite notes to the wooden posts. "Private property, please respect the boundary." By morning, the notes were gone. The second week, I hung a chain across the entrance. They cut it. After that, I left voicemails with the sheriff's department. No reply. I cornered Deputy Marks at the diner while he was dunking fries into a milkshake. "Trespassing's hard to prove," he said with a shrug. "You'll need video evidence." "I'm the witness," I said, voice rising. He just chuckled, helpless. "You know how it is, rich folks in gated communities think everything's theirs." So that was it. I was on my own. Meanwhile, the twins got bolder. One morning, I walked out to find a deep rut carved through my soybean patch, tire tracks gouging the earth. That field was supposed to be my harvest for the season. Now it looked like a monster truck rally had rolled through. As if that wasn't insult enough, my niece sent me a TikTok later that day. "Shortcuts for bad bitches, Lambo life." There they were, Susan in the passenger seat, Carol driving, hair whipping in the wind, music blaring, faces smug. The comments made my teeth ache. "Oh my God, Queens. Country roads? More like catwalks. Lambo don't stop for cows." My farm had become their backdrop. My life reduced to their shallow content. All because they couldn't be bothered to wait at a stoplight. I tried to stay calm. I tried to be reasonable. But patience has limits, and mine was gone. I started to pay attention to patterns. They always showed up Fridays and Sundays. Same time late afternoon, sun sinking low, shadows long, always decked out like they were headed to Vegas. Susan in neon green or hot pink crop tops, Carol in leopard print. Giant sunglasses perched like a crown, both caked in highlighter and attitude. Their Lamborghini was the star of their little circus, sparkling, spotless, a rolling monument to ego. The absurdity wasn't even the worst of it. It was the disrespect, the way they'd wave like we were friends, the way they pretended my farm was just part of their route. Every time they tore across the pasture, I clenched my jaw so tight I thought I'd crack a molar. I told myself I wouldn't stoop to revenge, but consequences. Those were fair game. You plant poison ivy, you don't get roses. So I started planning. Not some childish prank, something surgical, undeniable, impossible to ignore. I spent evenings pacing the backfield, studying the low spot past the corral. It was always soft after rain. A natural little bog in waiting. I'd watched trucks bog down there in spring, axles buried to the hubs. I knew exactly how to make it look harmless. One night, after the last cricket song died down, I loaded up the TV tools, supplies, a few things. From the farm store. Sprinklers, timer switches, rolls of hose, a couple bags of clay to get the consistency just right. I worked by moonlight, sweating through my shirt, building what I called the welcome mat. By dawn, it looked no different than the rest of the pasture. Dry straw spread neat across the top, but underneath, a trap waiting to devour a luxury ego on 4 wheels. I tested it by shoving in a hay bale, watched it sink like a brick in pudding. Perfect. Then I waited. 2 days, nothing. 3 days, quiet. By the 4th evening, I was half wondering if they'd finally found a conscience. Then I heard it, the throbbing bass vibrating the windows. The low, smug growl of that V8. I slipped the remote for the sprinklers into my pocket, stepped out to the fence, leaned on a post like I was just enjoying the sunset. Across the pasture, the Lamborghini crested the ridge, headlights blazing. Susan was already shrieking with laughter, phone held high to record every second. Carol gunned the engine. Dust billowed around them in golden clouds. I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't give them the satisfaction. They hit the gap in the fence and barreled toward the welcome mat. From their angle, it looked like every other shortcut they'd ever taken. Smooth, solid. They had no idea. 0.30 yards. I could see Susan's ridiculous rhinestone sunglasses glinting. Her lips were moving, probably narrating their next TIKTOK. 20 yards. My thumb found the button in my pocket. 15 yards. I pressed it. A faint click. A soft hiss as water surged through hidden hoses, soaking the clay into a thick, soupy trap. They didn't notice. They never did. The Lamborghini glided forward, front tires crossing the straw, without a hitch. Then the back tires hit the softened clay. It started subtle, a gentle sag under the weight. The first hint that something was wrong. Carol must have felt it. Her hands twitched on the wheel. Susan stopped, laughing. And then the Urus sank. Half an inch. An inch. 2. Carol panicked and hit the gas, the exact worst thing she could have done. Mud shot up in twin rooster tails. The tires spun, carving grooves deeper and deeper. The Lamborghini jerked forward a foot, then stopped dead. I swear, it looked like it bowed its head, like even the car was embarrassed to be part of this disaster. Susan screamed. Carol screamed back. Then the passenger door swung wide, and Susan stepped out into the muck. She made it exactly 1 step before she face planted with a squelch so loud, I winced. Her shriek was half choked by a mouthful of mud. Carol tried to climb out the window, slipping and landing square in a fresh layer of cow manure I'd mixed in for extra authenticity. 2 queens of entitlement, dethroned in a single instant. I folded my arms across my chest. Waited. Watched them flail. It was more satisfying than any apology could have been. Susan was screaming so loud it echoed across the field. Her arms flailed as she tried to stand, but the mud clung like glue. She lost a sandal. She lost what was left of her dignity. Carol was no better, struggling to climb out the window, slipping, landing hard on her hip. They were both caked in muck from head to toe. A perfect tableau of instant karma. I didn't move, didn't say a word, just leaned on my fence post, watching. That's when the convertible of their friends finally pulled up. 5 women in sundresses and floppy hats. Phones out, recording every humiliating second. One of them was laughing so hard she was crying. Another yelled, "Susan, you look like a chocolate-dipped marshmallow." Susan whipped around, pointing a dripping finger. "Stop filming. Delete that video." But they didn't stop. They got closer. Carol staggered to her feet, mascara running down her face. She locked eyes with me. "You did this," she shrieked. I raised an eyebrow. "You mean I built a pasture?" Her mouth worked like she was chewing a lemon. Susan sloshed toward the fence, her voice ragged. "You're going to pay for this, you hillbilly psycho." "That's a $200,000 vehicle," I shrugged. "You're welcome to try and tow it out. Last time a tractor got stuck there, it needed a crane." The girl with the phone was doubled over laughing. Susan took another wobbly step, slipped again, landed flat on her back with a splutch so loud everyone cringed. Carol was too busy yelling threats to notice. "I'll sue you," she screamed. "You think you're clever? You think this is funny?" I exhaled a slow breath, then for good measure, pulled out my phone. Their faces drained of color. I spoke calmly. "You said I needed proof, remember? Well, Deputy Marks, if you're watching later, here's your trespassing footage, your destruction of property, and your threats. All documented." Susan lunged forward like she'd leap the fence, but she could barely lift her feet from the muck. "Delete it," I tilted my head. "Right after you delete my fences, crops, and topsoil." Behind them, the girls in the convertible were streaming live. A whole comment section was watching them squirm in real time. Then came the sound none of them expected, an air horn. Everyone turned. At the crest of the hill, a battered tow truck rolled up, the driver sipping from a foam cup like he was enjoying the show. I'd called him an hour earlier. He leaned out the window. "You ladies stuck?" Susan tried to straighten her shoulders, mud dripping from her hair. "Get this car out of here, right now." He scratched his beard, not without a waver. "Your insurance cover off-road recovery?" Carol blinked. "This isn't off-road." He gestured to the churned-up bog. "Sure ain't a road." Susan opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Nothing she could say would make this look less ridiculous. The convertible girls were howling with laughter, zooming in on every slip and squelch. I turned and walked back toward my barn, took a long sip of iced tea, watched from a distance as the tow rig started laying boards to try to rescue the Lamborghini, now sunken in the clay like a monument to bad decisions. By the time the truck driver got them halfway out, Susan was back to shrieking orders. Carol was trying to clean her face with a wad of napkins. Neither of them looked so glamorous anymore, and it hit me then. This wasn't just a bad day for them. It was a public lesson, one they'd never outrun, no matter how many filters they slapped on their next video. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No roaring engines, no bass thumping the windows, just the soft hum of cicadas and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I stood on my porch with a cup of coffee, looking out over the field where that Lamborghini had sunk like a luxury battleship. Now the mud had dried in thick, cracked layers, a fossilized monument to arrogance. By noon, half the county had seen the video. One of Susan and Carol's own friends had uploaded it to TikTok with the title, "Karen's Take Luxury Shortcut Farmer Teaches Them a Muddy Lesson." It exploded. 3 million views in the first day. By nightfall, it was all over the local news. The footage was cinematic. Susan face-planting into manure, Carol slipping off the hood, the Lamborghini sinking like it owed the earth money. Someone even did a slow-motion replay with dramatic violin. Music in the background. I didn't make a dime from it. Didn't need to. That kind of poetic justice is its own reward. The next day, strangers started stopping by my farm, not to gawk, but to shake my hand. One man drove over from 2 counties away and left a case of beer with a handwritten note. "Thanks for taking one for all of us." My neighbor Harold, who hadn't cracked a smile since the Clinton administration, laughed so hard he had tears in his eyes. "I told you," he wheezed, "you can't polish stupid." But Susan and Carol weren't finished. 2 days later, I got an envelope delivered by some uptight courier. Inside was a lawsuit notice. Intentional property damage, public defamation. Emotional distress. It read like a bad Hollywood script. Phrases like psychological warfare, booby-trapped terrain, and malicious intent to embarrass. There were even blurry screenshots of them covered in mud, scowling like overfed raccoons. I nearly choked on my sandwich laughing. But I didn't panic. I had all the receipts. Video footage, clear as day, with no trespassing signs visible. Call logs and voicemails with the sheriff. Emails to the HOA. Neighbors ready to testify about the damage and months of chaos. And best of all, the viral video was posted publicly by their own friend. So I called my old buddy Vic, who owed me a favor since the Christmas Eve I pulled his truck out of a ditch. Vic read through the complaint and laughed for 2 full minutes. He said, "Let them sue, we'll counter." And we did. I filed a simple countersuit: trespassing, destruction of property, endangerment of livestock, and harassment. I attached an invoice for the fence repairs, pasture regrading, and all the time I'd wasted cleaning up their TikTok circus. A week later, their lawyer backed off, probably realizing this was a PR grenade waiting to blow up in their faces. No apology came. Just silence. But something unexpected happened next. The clip kept spreading. A big YouTube channel picked it up for a karma compilation. Then a late-night host cracked a joke. The Lambo that learned humility. My farm page, which I barely used, suddenly had 1,000 followers. Then 10,000. I hadn't even posted anything. Just a single photo of a muddy tire with the caption, "Sometimes the earth bites back." The comments poured in. "You're a legend. Farmer Gandalf." My dream is to be this level of petty. I didn't think of it as petty, it was just practical, but momentum is momentum, so I leaned in. I posted a video me standing next to the patch of land the internet was now calling the Bog of Karen. I walked folks through how to legally protect your property, keep your soil healthy, and deal with entitled TRESPACERS. No theatrics, just dry humor and clear facts. That went viral too. Sponsors started reaching out. A boot company sent me free gear. A hose brand asked me to test their product. A cable network wanted to film a reality series. I turned that last one down. I'm not a celebrity. Just a man with a fence and a grudge that happened to settle itself publicly, and I'll admit, there was a special satisfaction knowing the world had seen what I saw. 2 people who thought they were untouchable humbled by mud, pride, and bad decisions. A few months later, I spotted Susan and Carol at the grocery store. I almost didn't recognize them. No makeup, no designer bags, no attitude. Just 2 women in oversized sunglasses pushing a grocery cart. They were driving a dull gray Kia Soul. Carol glanced up and met my eyes for a split second, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before: humility. Maybe even fear. Susan muttered something under her breath and turned away. I nodded once, respectful, and walked on, whistling. Some stories don't need sequels. Still, I keep that sprinkler system buried in the same patch of pasture. And every so often, I refresh the sign: private property. Trespassers will be embarrassed. My field is quiet again. The animals are calm. The fences are standing. And the only tire tracks in my soil belong to people who respect it. They say karma takes time. But sometimes, all it takes is a little water, a little clay, and just the right amount of pushback.